Here is another question that one of our viewers had, and it has something to do with the walk line associated with a stairway. And in most cases, the walk line is going to be 12 inches away from one side, usually the inside of the stairway, or the path that would be traveled most of the time when going either up or down the stairways. Most people rarely walk up the center of a stairway unless the stairway isn't very wide. So for example, if I had a stairway that was 26 inches wide, I'd probably walk up the center. However, if it's about 5 foot wide, then you're probably going to walk up one side or the other. And most building codes refer to the walk line as something that would be 12 inches from the inside of a stairway. So depending upon what side that would be would depend upon the path of travel. And in the walk line, the step measurements, the measurements that you're going to be measuring from the face of the furthest most projecting point on the top step to the furthest point projecting from the lower step, or this distance right here most of the time, needs to be the same or can vary sometimes. However, the amount of that might not be very much. For example, most building codes allow a 3/8 maximum variation from the shortest to the widest step. So this doesn't mean you can have a 10-inch step here, a 10 3/8 inch step here, 10 3/4 inches. No, the steps cannot vary more than 3/8 of an inch. And that might look something like a 10-inch step here, 10 1/8 inch step here, 10 1/4 inch step, 10 3/8, 10 1/4, 10 3/8, just not more than 3/8 of an inch. So when we go to the circular stair, we're going to have the same thing. Our walk line is going to be 12 inches in, and each one of these measurements need to be the same, or whatever your local building codes will allow as variation. So not too difficult. We just went from straight to circular or curved stairs. And of course, the reason why I'm making the video, this was actually the type of stairway that the viewer was questioning. Can you build a stairway where you can flip the treads or flip the stairway? For example, if this stairway looks a little similar to the other one, it's because this section right here is the same as this section here. I just rotated it 180 degrees and then snapped it together. And of course, you can see the problem that we're going to have with the walk line, to where we're going to have the same size steps here. However, most building codes might not allow you to change at any part in the stairway and go over the maximum distance of 3/8 of an inch for each step. And you can see here where we're probably going from about 13, 14 inches to about 8 or 9 inches. And that also might not be accepted if you alternate each step. And I'm just kind of throwing this out there to provide you with a little more things to think about if you're going to get a little creative with your stairway design. Because something like this is going to provide a different step along the walk line. However, it might not produce a different step if we're going up the center of the stairway. And for those of you who think that I was providing you with a little hope that would allow you to build something like this, think again. This is probably not going to make your building inspector happy. Now, what if we take two sections of a winder, one here, and rotate this one 180 degrees. And even though I'm not suggesting this will be approved by your local building codes, I am suggesting that you could have an argument here, because this wouldn't be that difficult of a stairway to walk up and down as long as you were kind of traveling this path here and not using the walk line measurements that would look something like this here. So if we were going to go to the inside and then switch to the other side, if this was allowed, then it might work. However, if our walk line needs to stick to the inside of the stairway, then you can see right here where it's not going to work. And of course, for those of you wondering why you've seen stuff like this built before, then I only have three possible answers. One is that the stairs never went through any type of building permits or building code approval. Two, the building's old and there weren't any building codes when it was built. Or third on the list is the fact that the building department approved it for whatever reasons. And of course, the biggest problem with building codes is the actual interpretation from your building department representative or inspector or both. Because sometimes winders are viewed a little different than curved stairs, even though the only difference in my opinion would be the shape of the inside and the shape of the outside. Because I haven't found any building codes that suggest that a set of winders cannot connect with another set of winders in the opposite direction, even though I've never seen something like this built before. This has got to be one of the biggest problems with understanding the different types of stairways for private home use, basically, and public buildings. What the difference is and stuff like that. I can tell you what the building code books say. I can tell you what I've learned over the years, but these building codes change and the interpretations of them change. So you would need to check with your local building department to verify the information in this video. But what I would like to do is point out that there are two different types of stairways. A stairway with a 45-inch minimum tread width, stairway width, and a 11-inch tread depth. And of course, this stairway actually has a minimum or a maximum riser of 7 inches, maximum height of 7 inches, minimum of 4 inches most of the time. Over here, we have a maximum of 7 3/4 inches and a minimum of 4 inches again. So you can see we have two different stairways. This one has a 3-foot minimum width with 10-inch tread depth minimums. So the minimum tread depth, 10 inches. This is for a private dwelling. 2018 building code suggests that instead of, used to be more or less for a private residential stairway, you could use this right here. So this would be for a single family home, R3 construction basically. And this right here is the standard stairway. This is the basic building codes right here. This is basically an exception to this building code. According to the building code book, 2018, if you have an occupant load less than 50 people, less than 50 people are going to be living in the building, then you can use this right here. More than 50, then you would use this right here. So you would have to figure out what that occupant load would be. I mean, you go to some restaurants and stuff like that, and it'll say occupant load of 68 people. So I would doubt that you'd be able to use this if you went to a restaurant, a public building, where there are only the occupant load, maximum occupant load in that building is 40 people. You're probably going to have to use this one. Residential homes, this one. Public buildings, this one. And that's probably the best way I could interpret it. And I believe most building authorities would agree with that also. So let's take a look at the residential one. 3-foot wide minimum tread or stair width. This is the entire stairway. If you build a stairway where you're going to have a section that's going to be larger and smaller, maybe larger at the bottom, smaller at the top, this is going to have to be the minimum for that. Tread depth, 10 inches. It can be larger than 10 inches, just cannot be smaller than 10 inches. The width of the stairway for a public building is 44 inches minimum. Can be larger, can't be smaller. 11-inch minimum tread depth. And again, that's the distance from the face of the projecting surface. So if you have a nosing, that would be from nosing to nosing. And again, I got more information on that on some of my other videos. So maybe I'll put some links in here. You can always go to the website, go to the building code section on the website, and then go to the stair section in the building code area for more helpful videos or interpretations on this. And some of the videos might be a little outdated also because of the building code book. Some of the, I started making these videos in 2008, so some of them might need to be updated. But you should be able to look at the date on the video and get an idea whether or not it's still usable. So anyway, I hope this helps. This is the difference between what I would refer to as a public stairway and a private stairway. and the measurements for the treads and risers that you will have to deal with. In this video, I am going to try and explain a problem that seems to be one of the most difficult problems for a stair builder to get, or an amateur, someone who's just trying to learn the process. So let's go ahead and see if we can figure out how many steps you're actually going to need. And the way you're going to do that is by dividing a few numbers into the overall height or the total rise, and then working from there. So let's go ahead and get started. We have 5 steps and 6 risers. 6 steps, 7 risers, 7 steps, 8 steps, 9 steps, and 10 risers. Let's go ahead and take a look at them one at a time. If we divide the number 10 into the overall height, which is 42 inches for this particular example, that will provide us with a 4.2 inch riser height. 10 risers, 4.2. And what I'm getting at here is all you need to do is start dividing a few numbers and then work from there. And I'm going to kind of run through that after I do this example here. So anything less than 4 inches, 3.82. This is below the minimum. 11 risers is going to be too much. So 10 treads isn't going to work, but 10 treads or 10 risers, 9 steps will work. And then if we go to the opposite end, 7 3/4 inches is going to be the most common maximum riser height, maximum individual riser height per step for most residential stairways. So this does not include public stairways. And if you're going to be doing some work to a building, it wouldn't be a bad idea to contact your local building department, building authorities, and see what your minimums and maximums are. So all of these numbers in between here that are going to be above the minimum and below the maximum will work. So we can have 6 risers, 7 risers, 8 risers, 9 risers, and 10 risers for a 42 inch or a 42 inch tall overall rise. 42 inch total rise or height between levels. So I hope that makes sense. So the minimum this isn't going to work because it's going to be too small. This is going to be too tall. You can use any one of these that will work for your particular case. So let's just go ahead and go through. This one here, I believe, is 8 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8 steps, 9 risers. That's one of them. And here, of course, we're going to have 7 steps, 6 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we are going to have 5 steps. And the 5 steps will give us a 7 inch riser, I believe. Is that what that was? Let's pull up our chart again. 6 risers is going to be 6 7-inch risers will give us 5 steps. So 6 7-inch risers. Let's pull that down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each one of these are going to be 7 inches. So that'll be 5 steps for that. So if that makes sense, you don't have to watch the rest of the video. However, if it does not, and you need one more example, I am going to provide you with one. So in this example, we're going to use 75 inches for our total rise, or the distance between the 2 floors. That would be the top of the lower level to the top of the upper level. So basically all I'm suggesting here, and this isn't that difficult to do, is just start dividing numbers into your overall total rise. And I'm going to start with my first attempt here by using the number 7. And if I do that, I divide 7 into 75, I get 10.71. That's too big. Remember, our maximum vertical riser height that we're shooting for is going to be 7 3/4 most of the time. Second attempt, I'm going to increase this number by 2. That's going to bring us to 8.33. We're still too big. So if I add 2 more to that and divide 11 into 75, I get 6.82. Now this is a number we can work with. So again, I've just divided 3 numbers and I finally hit 1. Now I'm not suggesting that you need to stop here unless this number is going to work. So just divide a few more. 11 worked. I want to see if 10 will. 10 gives us 7.5, and this works also. And 7.5 is an excellent riser height, by the way. 7.5 with a 10-inch tread is a nice, comfortable step to use. So again, you don't have to stop there. If we divide 12 into 75, we get 6.25. Now we have 3 numbers we can work with here that are pretty good. But again, you don't got to stop there. I'll let you work your way down. But you will see that by the time we get down to using 18 risers, we're getting to 4.17 inches. Even though this is acceptable or should be acceptable to most building departments, 19 will not be. You can see here where 19 provides us with a riser height below 4 inches. So any of these that have the word good next to it can work for your particular stairway most of the time. So again, you need to check with your local building department, and I suggest that strongly. You know, the reason why I say that is because I know a lot of people make videos on YouTube and they say something like that's it. That's the law, that's the rule. And that's not the case. You know, you might watch this video if you're living in another country in Europe somewhere and you're watching this video, it might not apply to you. You're dealing with millimeters and centimeters and stuff like that. You know, you're not dealing with inches. So check with that. I really suggest doing that to just cover your own behind there. You know, the last thing you want to do is build a stairway and then have someone come up and say, you got to tear that apart. You didn't build it right. So anyway, let me know if this helps. You know, that I think one of the most difficult things for a, beginner stair builder to do is figure all of this stuff out, how many steps they're going to need. It's got to be I can't think of a bigger problem. You know, the next step would be actually getting a stairway to fit in a tight spot. And I do have some videos for that. I will put a link here to either a playlist or to a video for that. And I will also put a link somewhere in the video because I can't have these links too close together. But check out one of our videos we made on the 17.5-inch rule for stair building. That helps you figure out the tread width. So I gave you an idea how to figure out how many treads to use and how many risers you can use. But the width of the tread, the depth of the tread, that's also important when it comes to building a stairway. In this video, I will provide you with a simplified version or explanation from the 2018 International Building Code Book of what's actually required for or to figure out the width and depth of a stair landing. Now, the first thing they point out is that a stair landing is at the top and the bottom of the stairway, and that it needs to be the same depth as the width of the stairway. So this is important. There's only going to be one exception to this rule, and that's when we get to stairways larger than 48 inches wide. So if you have a single family home, which I would imagine the bulk of the people watching this video are looking for information for the homes that they live in, or maybe something you're remodeling or building. Now, I need to point out that this information isn't going to be accepted all the time by your local building authorities, your building department. So if you're building something new or remodeling something, always check with them to make sure that what they require, because if they change a little bit, then you could be in for a nightmare. And I also need to point out that there are so many rules and regulations in the building codes that some of the people who check the plans don't always check certain things. In their mind, they have certain measurements locked in, and so they might not be checking it. And these building codes might not have applied to those stairs built in the past, but might apply to the stairs built in the future. So when you go to someone's house and you say, wait a minute, this doesn't work here, that's fine. But these building codes from the 2018 International Building Code book look like they might have changed. So let's go ahead and get started. If you live in a home, single family home, or a building with an occupant load of less than 50 people, then 36 inches by 36 inches, 3 foot by 3 foot at the bottom will be a minimum. The stair width is 36 inches wide, 36 inches deep. And at the top, you would need the same distance, 3 foot minimum, 3 foot in depth. It can be bigger, just can't be smaller. Now, these measurements are going to change if you come to a public building or a building with an occupant load of more than 50. And of course, that means that the width, minimum width on a stairway is going to now change to 44 inches or 3 foot 8, bringing the depth of the landing to 3 foot 8 inches also. So single family homes is probably not going to apply to you, but this will to practically every other stairway built. So again, 44 inches at a landing that's in the stairway by 44 inches. And of course, at the bottom, it will be the same also. Now, here's something else that can be a little confusing, and I hope I don't make it more confusing, but 4 foot, 48 inches is kind of a minimum maximum or a maximum minimum for a stairway. And to make it simplify it as simple as I can possibly do it, any stairways wider than 4 foot wide, any stairways with a width larger than 48 inches do not require you to go the same depth, to use the same measurement as the width of the stairway for your landing depth. 4 foot is fine, so it cannot be smaller than 48 inches. Even if the stairway is wider than 4 foot. So if I had a 5 foot wide stairway, I can use a 4 foot depth. It does not need to be 5 feet. I mean, if you could imagine this, what if I had a 10 foot stairway? Does it need to be 10 foot deep? Would I need a 10 foot long, landing? If this was 10 foot wide, no, I could go to a 4 foot wide stairway and go all the way up. Now, if you were going to build a stairway that's 10 foot wide, and then come to a landing and have a 10 foot landing with a 10 foot wide stairway, they're not going to have a problem with that because that's going to be well above the minimum measurement of 4 foot. So I hope that makes sense. So if I had a stairway that was 4 foot 1 inches wide, 49 inches, 4 foot 1, then this could be 4 foot. It does not need to be the same width and depth. They don't need to use the same measurement for that. And of course, that is all the way through the stairway. Another building code you might need to familiarize yourself with will be any stairways with a vertical height longer than 12 feet will need a landing in them. So here we have basically 13 feet, 1.5 inches from the ground to the landing. Stairway like this will not be acceptable. You will need to have a landing in that stairway. So the width of the stairway or the depth needs to be the same or larger than the width of the stairway. Now, I would definitely check with your local building authorities for this one here because I remember, and I just thinking out loud here, this used to be 48 inches and they could have changed it. And it might not have ever been 48 inches, but I would definitely check with them. Now, the reason for this, I think if you've watched some of my videos recently, you would know, is that if someone was to fall down the stairway, then they're going to fall and stop at the landing. If you fall down from the top of a stairway like this, you could actually fall all the way down the stairway. So that's the reason why they want this particular building code. And of course, a lot of times, once it's explained and makes sense to you, you're going to be more susceptible to do it because it makes sense safety-wise. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, let us know by hitting the thumbs up button or letting us know in the comment area.